In ancient times, the leaders were as subtle as sorcerers. No one knew what they were about to do. How can we describe them to you? They were like soldiers about to cross a cold river, hesitant, watchful, and uncertain. They were cautious, like people who know there is danger. They were overpolite, like practiced guests. They gave way like ice melting. They were simple, like uncarved wood. They were empty, like deserted valleys. They were muddy, like unreflecting water. The mud will settle, and it is hard to wait for it. But if you can, then you can act. If you follow the Tao without pretension, you will never burn yourself out. This is an interesting take on action and decision making and leadership. I know this will be obvious to you, but in modern society, we are often expected to, or it's seemingly, say, in style, to have quick, snap judgments and knee jerk reactions to things and to come up with a response to something on the spot. Think about what, for example, talk shows or cable news or even debates have done in this regard. Everything is a soundbite. Everything is answer this incredibly complex question in 30 seconds. Go. Or another sort of permutation of this is headlines and clickbait, really. The statistics that are out there for how many people just read headlines and never read the story. And then just by reading that headline, they are left with, or they walk away with, a very strong, emotionally charged opinion about something, which is what the writer and the editor was trying to do to you, but isn't necessarily the best thing for you or for them or for society as a whole. And so in this verse, the Tao is saying, I think in several different ways, it's trying to say the same thing. It's saying that leaders, or you can just think of this as, again, a leader in your own life, even if you're not a government leader or a leader in your family or your friend group or at work, you're still the leader of your own life. So just keep that in mind. So it's saying here leaders were hesitant, watchful, and uncertain. And I think in modern day society, we've lost the admiration and the inkling to contemplate. Contemplation has been pushed aside pretty summarily for, like I talked about before, quick knee-jerk reactions and responses and needing to have an immediate, say, solution for everything. And that sort of uncertainty that can then find itself becoming contemplation and rumination and the ability to, I guess you'll understand why I'm laughing about this in my head, the ability to volley both sides of an issue, or maybe there's 12 sides to an issue in your head before coming to a conclusion and speaking it aloud. I mean, there's very few people who can even sort of consider or regurgitate an opinion that isn't theirs. Like that old debate prep of you need to be able to argue either side of the debate as effectively as the other. Whether you truly believe it or not, you need to know it thoroughly and be able to make those arguments. I think that that is a considerably lost art at this point in time. And I know it still happens here and there, but I don't think it's dominant. The Tao goes on to say they were cautious, like people who know there is danger, over polite, like practiced guests. Other things that we've seemingly lost to a large degree in modern society, being a bit cautious and feeling like you can't just say wild things all the time with no repercussions, and that there's no issues that you're causing by, just dropping some nasty comment to someone online because you're hiding behind perceived anonymity, or at least a perceived distance, right? Even if they know who you are, there's a distance there if you're doing it online. And that disregard for caution or understanding that there's a danger in things that you can do is certainly grown in recent years, I believe. This ties in obviously to the polite nature, right? Those things are anti-polite, if you will. The Tao goes on to say, giving way like ice melting. They were simple like uncarved wood, empty like deserted valleys. And then let's hold on the muddiness for a moment, but let's talk about giving way, being simple, and being empty. These are not things that are typically valued or held up as provocatively positive attributes in modern society. Oftentimes, being sort of steadfast and persuasive versus giving way and being flexible. Or we will value the complexities of a person and how deep they are and how profound they are and how many layers there are to them, as opposed to the simplicity of a person. And we're certainly driven to fill up with more and more and more titles, more and more money, more and more belongings, versus the emptiness of a deserted valley. So another sort of take a moment to think about what the Tao is saying versus what the societal pressures are putting on you at this point in time, and make your decisions from there. But at least it gives you an opportunity to consider a different way. Now, the end of this, the muddiness. This is really interesting, and it's a very obvious visual, I believe. You have muddy water. That mud ultimately will settle to the bottom, and the water will become clearer and clearer as it does. And the Tao here is saying that before you act, let that mud settle. Let things become clear. It's a callback to the beginning of the verse. We're talking about contemplation, rumination, being hesitant, being watchful, being uncertain. And in those moments, when there is an opportunity and when there is a desire to not have a knee-jerk response and an immediate reaction, but to take time to think it over and to let your thoughts coalesce and clarify, the Tao here is saying, not only should you take that opportunity to do it, but it is really necessary to do that before you take action, because action can be so precise and definitive. And as you have opportunity to take time before setting foot and putting something in action, you should absolutely allow yourself that time and that ability. And by doing these things, you slow down. You extract a bit from the hamster wheel, from, as we colloquially will say, the rat race. And what does it say at the end of this verse? You will never burn yourself out. How pervasive is burnout these days? I know that you can look up statistics and details. I think it's probably astoundingly higher than anything that you will find, statistically speaking. And here's essentially a way out, a way to step aside and say, I understand you all are doing it this way, and you all are running yourselves ragged in this fashion, but I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to proceed this way. I'm going to move over a lane, and that's where I'm going to roll. And this is your opportunity to consider doing that and avoiding the hamster wheel and facing the burnout that seems inevitable.